So at the time that I started working on the book, I was doing my MA in Visual Arts Practices at IATT. So I was looking at a lot of installation artists, and one of the artists I was looking at is Jenny Keane. So she makes these large-scale drawings that kind of reproduce scenes from horror films where the female body is being conflated with the abject or the horrific element. And what she does is she makes these large-scale drawings and then she literally licks away the abject part. So she has one from Interview with the Vampire where young Kirsten Dunst's neck has teeth marks in it, so she licks away the teeth marks. And what happens then is that her saliva reacts with the paper and forms this kind of like wound or sore on the drawing. And I just became really fixated by her approach, and because the horrific element is displaced, it's still there, but it's not where you expect it to be. And another drawing I was looking at a lot was Donor for Spot Exam by Megan Eustace, which is a drawing of a cadaver. And I became fixated on that, thinking about how something can be both, an artwork can be both immensely tender but also immensely violent at the same time. So those are kind of two of the approaches that I wanted to approach through text. Yeah, it was kind of inadvertent, I suppose, because I was looking at these artists who deal with the metaphors that get ascribed to female bodies, and I was also looking at texts by people like Julia Kristeva and Simone de Beauvoir, and then thinking about the language that gets ascribed to female bodies. So, you know, Simone de Beauvoir has this famous saying, "Woman is not born, woman is made." And I was like, what if we kind of lean into and implode this language? So then Ada became a girl who is not born, she's made out of the ground. So yeah, it was really quite contingent and accidental in that, I suppose, when you put the language and the metaphors that are ascribed to female bodies into the real world and ask them to behave in the real world, they perform like magical realism. But then when I was younger, I read like so much Hemingway and Chandler, and I think that maybe in my writing style there's still maybe a pared back kind of realism, and I think I've always been more sort of fixated on language and what language is doing rather than genre. So yeah, the magical realism it was the right approach or the right kind of vessel for these sets of experiences that I wanted to talk about. Really, I think I think the first challenge when I first started, and something that I think I sort of achieved through a degree of naivety, was to take yourself very seriously and to take the work you're doing seriously, especially when other people might seem sort of hesitant to take you seriously or what you're doing seriously. So I think that's something that you have to sort of nurture, and it's difficult, it can be incredibly difficult. The other thing, I think, is just actually getting people to look at and read your work and spend time with your work. I mean, when New Island Publishing Follow Me to Ground came about because Dan Bolger, the commissioning editor at the time, heard me give a reading and asked me to send, he got in touch and like went through the trouble of looking up my email, like finding my website, and asked me if I had a novel in the drawer, and I said that I did. So it was like so contingent and accidental, whereas I've been getting rejected left, right and centre through all of the kind of official conduits for so long. So I think just getting people to actually give your work time is hugely, hugely difficult. But the advice I would give, which is kind of cliche advice, is, you know, there were so many times when I was so tempted to stop writing fiction and had decided to quit and was really upset, but felt that it was the responsible decision. And I was really lucky in that I had lots of people close to me who told me to keep going. So I would say, keep going. And I would say from a process, maybe more artistic point of view, to write towards the thing that you're afraid to know, or the thing that you think might change you, or change the way you think about yourself in the world. And I think that keeps you urgent and keeps you on point. Yeah, I think there are two main ones that I always come back to thinking about Follow Me. And that's Emer McBride's A Girl is a Half-Formed Thing that I read the summer that I was working on the book. And I read it sort of before it was picked up by Faber, or before it kind of gained that like intense following. And it was just, I thought it was like the most perfect thing I'd ever read. And the sense of like a very visceral or corporeal writing that seemed to be generated in time with experience, with the experience impacting on the body. And this sense of text landing on the page in time to experience, somatic experience, landing in the body was something I was just so happy it existed when I read it. And then the second book is by Banu Kapil called Humanimal, A Project for Future Children. And it's a short book based on the two wolf girls, Amal and Kamala, who were found living with wolves in the Bengal jungle in 1921. And the book is all about how these girls were found, how their wolf family was shot. They were brought back to a church-run orphanage in Midnapore, and they were walking on all fours. I think one was 18 months old, and the other was, I can't quite remember, maybe 6, but they were walking on all fours, and they couldn't speak, and they couldn't digest human food, and one died of nephritis and the other died of tuberculosis. So after this prolonged trying to integrate them into normal society. So I think that book really stayed with me because I was thinking about these like different types of bodies that are have access to different kinds of experience and that are punished for their difference, or bodies that suffer for their inherent difference. And I was thinking about how there's a cost for different types of experiences, for different types of bodies, and that Ada, that kind of then developed into Ada being a body who was inherently incompatible with intimacy. And rather than suffer for that incompatibility, she changes what intimacy can look like and is uncompromising and totally self-interested in that way. So, I think they were the two most important books that I still keep returning to kind of when I need to refresh myself.